I do, Brian Adams, Priscilla. Sometimes artists come up with very nice, they compose very nice songs, the words. Do you believe that someone can live for you and whatever they do is they do it for you?
Yes, the first example would be my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. He has done, lived, and, you know, put everything on the line and on the cross for me. So yes, I do believe that's possible, and it's perfect love. Also, the best picture would be our guardians, parents, especially mothers and fathers, or guardians in any form. They also have that sacrificial kind of love that just gives and gives and gives, no matter any amount of misbehaving you do, misconduct, the headache that you be as a child, a teenager, into growing up. They surely bear a lot. And we want to say good morning to you, dear elderly community in our country. You've done such a good job in ensuring that there's some sort of discipline and moral ethics as far as, you know, people are concerned in our country and in our communities. But this song apparently came out before I was born. Felix was telling me it came out during the Bush War times.
Actually, even much, but the concert was around 86.
86.
Yeah, but the song
Adams
is even
had
before.
That many people attending a concert in 86.
Do you know that guy?
No, I don't know, apparently.
Hey, don't dare. But he did come out. There's a pop star that did quite nice music. But this particular song was one of those reminiscences over there. I think it's off the album of I Can't Get Enough. It was basically, I think, an album he did for love. But this particular song, he has part of the lyrics in his verse where he says that you can't tell me that it's not worth it dying for. And speaking about love. And then he comes out to say that even if you told me it's not worth it dying for, it's something I have made the choice to die for. So it's one of those super lyrics. And I think, as Robert asked, is there anyone, like, what wouldn't you do for love? And that's the power of love. Even if you talk about this erotic love, but also if you talk about agape, the biblical love, this shows you the power of love in all aspects. Someone says this, what can't I do for love? And the Bible is clear also. Just above faith, hope, and love, among the
greatest of them all,
greatest of them is love. Now, that's the power of love. And that's why for us, this February, you talk about it as being a month of love. Probably it's a month where we should also share a lot of love with every world around us. The walls of our families, walls of our societies, walls of our workplaces, our children, our parents. She talked about guardians. Let's give love. Let's give love. It's the greatest of all, I think. And sometimes when we hear, like, the stories we'll be doing, the question is like that song of the Black Eyed Peas. Where is the love?
Yes.
Because in the absence of the same is where we come up with all these sporadities and all these kind of things.
And that is the greatest commandment. Love one another. How can you love God when you do not love the people that are around you? Always talk about love. On the contrary, today we are doing a story where love is not expressed, and that is sexual harassment. Many a times we've seen ladies, mostly, but also men, undergoing sexual harassment. And we are referring to a story where female journalists are pinning, that is managers and police, as being at the forefront of harassing them during their line of duty. And these are so in that is in West Nile, where we've seen many coming out to express the problems they're going through. Let's first take a look at this story.
Female journalists operating in northern Uganda have accused news editors, media managers and news sources, including police, for sexually abusing them in the course of looking for news. This was during Uganda Journalist Union workshop on gender equality and safety of female journalists held at Tropical Suites Hotel in Arua town.
But do you think there is anything for free? There is nothing for free. If you want something, you need to work for it. I said, okay. So then I asked him, what do you want me to do? That you know. By then I was younger, I was really younger, but I didn't understand, but I knew the sexual. Of course, he wanted something sexually, but I didn't know exactly what you. I just told him, no, not here. I can't. I just can't.
So from that moment, he started being so rude to me. When we go to field, when he reaches field and finds me, they'll be like, Safina, what do you think you're doing? Do you think I brought you here to stay? Why aren't you working? You're letting people. And yet I'm actually doing the work. So he would really harass me all the time, being rude to me. Every time he addresses the team, anything, he gives a negative example with me. And yet everyone knew that I was doing my best. So I ignored. And the rest, there was unfortunately one girl who gave in to him.
Unfortunately, as I make 39 years old on the 25th of this month, something happened to me. One of my colleagues came and grabbed my bags. I was like, what? You're my friend, but this is unacceptable. Kindly do not do it again. And he was surprised because I'm this kind of really bubbly person. But I addressed because I even sympathized with him.
The scribe said female journalists less than 40 years of age are the most affected, leading to psychological and physical suffering that negatively impacts their work. West Nile Regional Police spokesperson Josephine Angusha urged the female scribes to expose the culprits by reporting their case to police and expressed commitment in fighting the vice.
Let us work together. In case you meet challenges, don't sit quiet wherever you are, or don't just swallow it, but contact the offices. One of them is Uganda Journalists Union. We also have Uganda Human Rights Commission. We have the police commanders around. If it is other junior officers harassing you, those junior officers always have their leaders. You can go to the next level so that such an officer can be penalized.
Very touching stories there. A person wakes up to go and make a living, earn a living, and someone makes terms and conditions very hard for them to perform their work. But what is sexual harassment? According to the International Labour Organization, definition that is sexual harassment can be defined as unwelcome and unwanted sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical contact of sexual nature that creates hostile or offensive environment. That is basically the easiest definition of that. Priscilla, here most of the time you see ladies come out. Maybe the men are silent, or it doesn't happen so much to the men as it happens to the ladies.
Question would be, why are men silent? Why do men prefer to suffer in silence? Yeah.
No, I think for us, not probably to even disguise the whole story. We must confront the truth of the matter. If you want to discuss gender, then you have to look at the ratios. Who is more affected? Okay, not that men are not affected, but on what scale? As you did say, let's talk about how many times do we have women make unwanted advances on men. It's something that is there, but not very much. I know that it is you could do away with it per se, but I think the large of the same and the most challenges and effects have been seen on the woman species.
So looking at the generic conversation would be sexual harassment in the workplace, and you have definitely described it in such a way that it's a conduct or a manner in a way that is unwelcome to the recipient of it. And we have seen this day in, day out. It's not a new story on the scene. We pretty much go through it in our workspaces. There's been campaigns that have been seeing around the city, billboards have been seeing around the city, make it
safe for her.
Make it safe for her. That's the campaign I've been seeing on different billboards.
Yes.
Make it safe for her in the city, make it safe for her in the workplace, make it safe for her in the taxi, make it safe for her in the market, make it safe for her in the school, make it safe for her wherever she interacts with rest of society. make it safe for her. And I'm glad that now it can be a national conversation that we can talk about and address. Of course, sexual harassment takes two forms. The first form would be when there's a job benefit. Maybe there's a promotion on table and you are wanting to put in an application for a promotion, and the person in the place of responsibility to be able to give you that promotion says that, you see, terms and conditions apply. You might want to put up your skirt so that you can get the promotion. And we have seen so many people that have gone through this cycle of, because they want to benefit from something, they have been reduced and sexually harassed in order to gain that benefit. And if they do not go as according to what has been told of them to do, they may end up finding themselves fired. You find yourself the next day you have no job and things like that. The other one that is like sexual harassment would be a hostile working environment where just the conduct creates conditions that are intimidated, and they are sex-based intimidation in terms of physical bad touches, unwelcome touches. There's unnecessary close proximity. You're talking about verbal comments and questions about appearance, someone's lifestyle, offensive phone calls or emails or text messages to your colleagues or from your colleagues for that matter. Non-verbal could be the whole whistling. There used to be a time when, as a teenager, you're walking in the street, as my mother, I remember, on Entebbe Road, we were walking from a supermarket, and these men did not have any shame in whistling at me. And I'm with an older woman. I'm thinking that should, you know, give you some reasoning of you can't do that. You get it? But again, there's this whole environment that has been set that there's a male dominancy world, and in that world, as women, you have got to do something more or less sexually related to be able to prove yourself worthy of sharing the same space with these people. So it then brings us, you know, to looking at some of the factors I was looking into sexual harassment. You look at, according to a report that was done in 2004, 55% of women aged 14 to 59 are usually victims of sexual harassment. So it's not something that is in the workplace actually.
Yes.
From 14 years old, as long as you start popping some breasts and you're starting to look milky, you are prone to sexual harassment. At school, you see students that have to exchange marks. We have seen reports in Makerere University of sexual harassment, to the extent that now they have come up with an app to have those students report their cases on that app so that they can be managed. Why? Because even the system is no longer trusted. The office that you report to is no longer trusted, no longer handles these cases with fairness and things like that, to the point that they have to come up with an app, a privacy of sorts, to be able to manage these cases. So when you look at these statistics, when you look at female workers, more or less 3 out of 10 female workers in this space will be sexually intimidated or harassed, for that matter. Case in point would be the story that we have just seen. The 2 ladies who gave account of their sexual harassment times. The first one was not as beautiful to one man's eye. And one person would come out and boldly say, but now really she does not look beautiful enough for her to be sexually harassed. The second one was fairly beautiful to another man's eye, and they would have made a solicited statement of, okay, that one can say she was sexually harassed. That alone is harassment. It is sex-based intimidation and violence. So it takes on very many shapes and forms. The question we should be asking ourselves, how do we protect her?
And that is what I want to bring in Felix. Felix, we have laws in this place that protect women against sexual harassment at places of work. But there is also an element, when you look at the various forms of sexual harassment, that sometimes people carry out this even unknowingly. Talk about the verbal element. You know, talk about making advances that maybe one would not fall into. So there's also an element of maybe ignorance into this. How best can we fight or reduce or prevent sexual harassment at workplaces?
Just for starters, Robert, you don't put ignorance and law in one sentence.
But ignorance could be the reason why.
Again, you don't put ignorance and the law in one sentence. Because you and me, or probably if you don't,
that ignorance is not a defense, yes.
ignorance cannot act as defense in terms of breaking or abusing the law. So, and I'll tell you that sexual offenses are mostly what we call strict liability offenses, that you don't need even to prove that there was intention. You get it? So you cannot tell us that I did not intend to touch her buttocks. What we consider as ultimate for us to castigate the same onto you is the fact that you touched. So whether you didn't have intention, whether you're sleepwalking or sleep moving your body, we have had all these defenses in courts. We don't care but what happens. Priscilla talked about the aspect of there's an element of gender. And if you want to understand the real problem before us, you must confront the bitterness of truth that is engulfed in the demeaning of what we call gender-based violence, because that's where it starts. We have communities in Uganda today, Robert, that, and I have a daughter, and when you have daughters, can you imagine how people congratulate you or how they talk about your daughter? Even sukari. You've heard of that?
Yeah, as a sukari, yes.
Kati sukari, Naroga is sukari to her family.
Seriously?
And that's how it starts. Come on.
No, I've
Where
never
do you
had
live?
it. I'm sorry. Wow, okay.
Literally referring to that is a bride price that you've given birth to a daughter.
Oh, so you're going to reap what
you get the thing.
sown.
Now, it comes in at birth. I hear people talk about even kasukari. And women, for that matter also. Not that it's a bad thing for our culture, probably for issues of exchanging. But now, it goes further than that. And that's the beginning. Now, every time you go in a community, and community sees you as something that will be exchanged later on, the value attached to you. Have you heard of the normatives that some cultures don't pay tuition or school fees for women or girls?
Because they believe she's going to grow up, get married. Also the culture that
it is
many
only in
cultures,
Uganda.
Felix, and in addition to that, that even inheritance, a woman does not inherit a property because they believe she's going to be taken at one point, she's going to be belonging to another family, so it is a commodity.
So what I'm saying is that because of all cultural, our cultural tendencies have contributed greatly. We live in families where we are shown, not even told, we are shown that men are greater than women. And that's the beginning of everything. By the time someone opens their mouth and puts together their 32 teeth, if they are still there, and utters a statement, or whistles, or hisses, or does those things to a woman, it starts somewhere. Maybe they have seen it in a family, where us the fathers, us the uncles, us the brothers, have made it a common behavior, a common practice to demean these women before the eyes of every other person. You're talking about sexual harassment at workplaces. That's not where it starts. Because there are places where it's not there. But it is simply you're having a misinformed guy, or probably someone who's still just exercising what he saw in his community.
Ignorantly doing that.
Not ignorantly. Because, and I'll come, there's a level where you must also choose to have knowledge. You're talking about professors in universities. You've heard Makerere stories. At that level, there's no ignorance. I don't want us to now to miss the point. But I know that
the rule,
yes.
norm.
Now for them, they are carrying on a culture.
Meanwhile, they also came in, found the culture, and
That's
they
the
carried
thing.
it
Now,
forward.
that's what we call institutional culture. As you talk about harassment, talk about institutional practices. Who has the higher mandate? Let's talk about workplaces. Where? Look at the HR. Does HR have policy against sexual harassment? Does HR have policy against workers' relations, all these kind of things?
It's one thing for even the HR to have the policy on against sexual harassment, but implementation, because you might find the HR is a man, and you think,
No,
but now we are
No, but even Priscilla, even talking about now, even if they are, because you see, policies, the reason why I like standards is that they are applicable even in differences of gender. Because you come and you don't change, the standards can't change for you but you must change to fit in. I have worked in some places personally, and I know that you will even fear to answer back to a colleague. Because of the standards you find that even if you come with your big head, how big it is, the standards will sort you. What we are talking about, let's talk about every day. On the streets, women meet harassment on the streets. I have seen a person touch a woman's buttocks, a woman's breast. How dare you do that? Where do you get the courage? Even for us, even if you had a fiance, sometimes even when you're married, sometimes you're scared. Because you know it is, and yet probably one would say you have a right. Because even you who are married, you fear. Now, how about you, who's a stranger, who's a border rider, a taxi driver, a conductor, a hawker, whatever, you jump onto someone's breast. That brings me to the laws. What is a legal regime that can help do away with sexual harassment? I'm trying to show you the gravity of things that we joke about. Imagine someone jumping onto someone's breast on a road, or a buttock, or touching their waist. Tamumanyi, you don't know the person. But remember, even your father can't do it. Even your mother who gave birth to you will not come and touch, but you a stranger. Now, that gives the magnitude of the problem. Let's talk about the laws. Has Uganda prepared a formidable legal regime to deal with sexual harassment that is not in fear of touching customs, culture, religion? Religion. You have had issues in churches where priests have sodomized boys, young boys, and that's harassment. Pastors, preachers have impregnated their sheep, if I may call it, you know. So all these things. But we must focus. I want to, just from talking about it, let's talk about the law, because we cannot take the law in our hands.
Yes, Felix, Uganda is one of the countries that I want to believe has so much good laws on paper. But I think the challenge has always been implementation or enforcement. When you talk about our labor laws, my brother, my sister, and to those watching, they're very, very rich to hold culprits, but there's always that element.
Yeah, there's always that element, but again, it's possible. I believe that one day it is actually possible to have a national framework that does protect, you know, gender as far as work and environment is concerned. We've seen success stories in India where they now have a criminal law against anything gender-based violence and harassment. You do have Chile that has labor codes. You violate that code, terms and conditions do apply to you. So why can it not happen for our Ugandan country? Why can it not happen in our own workspaces? But again, it starts with you. It doesn't start with anyone else. Your morality. It all starts in here, as Felix said, because there's no way you actually do it without having thought about it. That is not impossible. It starts in your mind. So if our men, our supposed fathers, uncles, relatives, whatever, are perverse in the mind, how do you expect them to be otherwise? Again, it goes back to culture. They have seen their forefathers doing it. They have seen their foreleaders doing it. Why not them doing it? And that will be their defense. So at the end of the day, you see that clearly there's no protection for her in a space such as a workspace. And that is where I would ask the Ministry of Labor and ATC to actually sit down and have a national dialogue about this matter, because it's there and people are suffering in silence and there's no solution, and yet there's decadence that's happening.
Well, the Bible says, do to others as what you want them or what you want to be done to you. Let's join efforts in fighting sexual harassment at workplaces. It begins with you, it begins with me. We can end it if we all determined to do that. But of course, before we go into our next segment, Priscilla, have you had your concoction this morning?
No, today I've had a complete hallelujah ginger tea drink is what I am taking this morning. I have gone back to my first love, which was ginger tea, and it's definitely nice. We recommend that you boost your immunity every single day with hallelujah ginger tea drink or hallelujah tamarind drink. They are good for your immunity, and they are available in the nearest place of purchase next to you. It is still Good Morning Uganda. We return with the newsreel.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Yes! Enjoy great value from Airtel with the all-new My Pakalast combo offers. We have customized especially for you the best deals on minutes, data and SMS with our 3-in-1 My Pakalast combo to give you the best value as you stay in touch with friends and family. To activate My Pakalast voice combo, dial *100*2*1# to get started.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
Kambanjulire, Alleluia Natural Drinks. Ebyokunywa bino biganzi nnyo, ng'ate biwoomu, bissaamu amaanyi mu mubiri, ne kuwangala. Bikoleddwa bakugumeerere, mubyeyunire, biri mu maduuka wonna wonna, ebbeeyi ya nseko. Alleluia Jinga Tea Drink guyita omubisi gw'entangawuzi ne Alleluia Tamarind Drink omubisi gw'enkoge bikutuusibwako Alleluia Reflexology Health Solution and Nutrition Center Limited. Okumanya ebisingawo noti 7 noti 3 noti 37 33 oba noti 393 24 15 66.
Archbishop Janan Luwum is a modern-day martyr who was killed in February 1977 at the orders of the then president of Uganda, Idi Amin Dada. Janan Luwum showed courageous leadership in opposing tyranny, gross human rights violations, and religious persecution in Uganda during Idi Amin's time. His death triggered global mobilization against Idi Amin until his overthrow in 1979 by a combined force of Ugandan and Tanzanian defense forces. The government of Uganda in 2016 declared 16th of February a National Commemoration Day in remembrance of Archbishop Janan Luwum. This year, 2021, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the province of the Church of Uganda, together with Directorate for Ethics and Integrity, Office of the President, are organizing a scientific commemoration celebration at State House in Entebbe. The general public is therefore invited to follow the live broadcast on UBC TV and other media platforms. This message is brought to you by Directorate for Ethics and Integrity, Office of the President.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Well, after discussing sexual harassment, I must be very careful regarding the various forms of sexual harassment. Something interesting just happened as we were preparing to get into another segment. Even if you're to remove something from a lady's coat, you must be very careful. You could move your fingers. Maybe there's something on her
then
jacket.
Then inform her that there's something on her jacket and ask her to remove it. It's very simple. It is the 15th day of February 2021. We get to look at the news, what's making headlines in the first day of the week, Monday. For the Daily Monitor Truth every day this morning, we get to look at Museveni AD asks for unmarked guns. Very interesting. Retired army officers still adamant. Army officers moved amidst abductions. You have security quiet on list of abductees. You have Luanga to NRM stop behaving like Amin. And the lizard is responding to that particular message and is saying maybe Janan Luwum spirit is talking to him. I do not know. Anyway, there are quotes on the front page from Kano J.K. Mukasa, and then you're also having quotes from Ronald Kakoza, who's a major. Then you also get to look at the rest of the paper this morning in news page 3. We continue to look at more stories. The impact of COVID-19 on education. School children vending on street amidst closure. You also have varsities release reopening. That's in there. You get to look at court. The story continues. The lawyers representing government in Bobby Paul petition. Elsewhere, environmentally today in Monday's edition of Daily Monitor, Uganda's air pollution level beyond World Health Organization limit. Healthy living brings you understanding your baby's skin conditions. Those are some of the stories on the front page for the Daily Monitor.
In the new vision, well, I can't stop laughing when it comes to Kapoza Mutale. In the new vision of today, there are big headline: Museveni orders security on arrested people. That is, security organs release 17 MUKONO youth. And they gave you pictures of some of those. That is Fred Kamia, you have Junior Kiberu, Juma Mokasa, Isma Senkubuge, Twaha Kajimu, Joseph Chionka, and Musa Male, among others, among those that were released by security agencies. Then how 5 friends built 210 million stove company. The new vision brings you that a full story on page 33 there. Then election petition, Chagulanyi files 50 affidavits. And regional news in Bunyoro, government earmarks 11 billion for tobacco farmers. Still, new districts miss out on road equipment. Then 20 ghost cops arrested on payday. For those in O-level, chemistry, mathematics and ICT are going to be in the daily today. Then tomorrow you have mathematics and chemistry. Government in the field of health, government to recruit over 600 health workers. So to get more about that, and over 490 jobs and tenders in the new vision of Monday today.
The Daily Guide brings you an insight on some of the stories that are in the deep of the Daily Monitor this Monday. UPDF officer dies in chopper crash. Of course, that was the military helicopter that crashed in Entebbe last week. Captain Karub Sinje, may her soul rest in peace. The sources say that it could have been malfunctioning. You look at 4 dying in fuel tanker accident, and 4 have been confirmed dead by police after fuel tanker hit a stationary lorry that was loading matoke on Fort Porto Kasese Road. Editors speak this morning. We look at regional and ongoing land wrangle in Jinja City, threatening the completion of a 16.5 billion road project funded by World Bank under the World Support to Municipal Infrastructure Development Program. You also get to look at Editors Speak in foreign. We get to look at former U.S. President Donald Trump being acquitted on Saturday on charges of inciting an insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. Read about more of that story in the foreign news from the Daily Guide. Today in history, we'll look at British slave ship docks at Zanzibar. It's interesting that this history comes out at the same time when there's a U.S. Army ship that is docking in Mombasa right now.
Some refer to it as warship.
Okay, so the year was 1591, and interestingly or coincidentally, there is also 2021 in the same region. Maybe history may repeat itself. Today in history again, we look at 1933, a U.S. president-elect surviving assassination in Miami.
In the new vision, more stories. Here we see Know Your Member of Parliament. That is a segment that the new vision of recently put up. And today they are bringing you Godfrey Sazi, that is Gomba East Member of Parliament. We also have Rebecca Kadaga, Kamuli Woman Member of Parliament. Then Atim Lee Buti Jackson, that is Arua Central Division Member of Parliament elect there. So they give you more to understand who your MP is, their date of birth, where they went through. Still today in history, in the new vision, it was on this date, the 15th day of February, but in 2001, when Besigye calls for new vision boycott, that is Dr. Kano Kiza Besigye's task force, as supporters to boycott the new vision following a story about Mbara Municipality Member of Parliament Winnie Byanyima and Haji Nassa Sebagala. The New Vision quoted Byanyima, who appeared on Radio West, as saying when Besigye was nominated on January 8th, he released a list of campaign agents and Sebagala was not on the list. He has never been commissioned to campaign for Besigye. The post of chief campaigner agent does not exist in the task force. Sebagala created it himself. Now we move to COVID-19. We always call upon you in Good Morning Uganda. Please perfect those drills and not be part of these statistics. As we speak today, Uganda have so far registered 328 deaths, people that have succumbed to COVID-19. New deaths 0 and recovery still not any. So we look at how the region is performing. East Africa, Rwanda, so far they have lost 238 persons. Kenya, they have lost 1,795 people, while South Sudan has lost 74 people. Looking at the worst hit countries, United States of America leads, followed by India, Brazil, Russia, and the United Kingdom.
In the world of sport today, in the Daily Monitor, we get to look at local sport, Express Peak tax returns from URA, look at the Uganda Premier League, the results from the games that happened over the weekend. We also have Uganda being represented by the under-20 Hippos aiming for fast start at AFCON bowing, and we are looking at them facing Mozambique. Read about their promising build-up, and of course the Australian Open continues as it entangles itself with COVID-19. Osaka Williams survived scare in a last 8, but Dominic Thiem sent packing. Surprise, surprise, surprise.
And in the New Vision, it's all about victory of our ambassador, the tourism ambassador, that is Joshua Cheptegei. How did I miss it? Maybe that was breaking the record again, because he retained his record. Cheptegei off to a win that starts in Monaco run. There's so much how it all went, who the record he beat there, and we see who was the second, third, fourth. They give you more of the stories there of what transpired in Monaco there, as our very own once again brought pride to the nation. Well, those are some of the stories that we're able to get through in the dailies. You can grab yourself a copy. But up next is traffic updates with Priscilla. But before you go to that, Priscilla,
yes,
do you have any memories of Kakoza Mutale? Were you following the political terrain when Kakoza Mutale dominated?
What are your memories of Kakoza Mutale?
Well, he was making media reports. He had a saying, Twala mwana wa mulalo, anechika, njakufa nawe. So he was during campaign time, he had a gang also that was operating. Could you be seen not in tandem with what is happening? Yes, Kakoza Mutale with his famous gang there did really so much. And when I see him asking for unmarked guns, I think the old man may surface anytime sooner with doing what he understands best there. Very controversial person there. And today when I saw that headline, asking for unmarked guns, very interesting. But we return with traffic.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Buyogera nyaffe Uganda ku Radio Africa. Tolemwa kumwenya. Olwakamwenyumwenyu akajjudde abanywanyi. Embeera y'obudde yatukolako mukwano n'obutonde obutubeezaawo. Ne butusobozesa buli omu okubeerawo mu ngeri ye. Kuba ffenna tuli banjawulo ne mu ngeri gye tukwasaganyamu emirimu gyaffe. Naye ekitugatta ne tufuuka omuntu omu bwe buwoomyo buva mu kyokunywa ekya Hallelujah Jingated Drink n'Hallelujah Tamarind Drink eddekende erikumala ennyonta ate nga wejjanjaba omubiri gwo. Ekyokunywa kino kye kitegeera emibiri gyaffe kuba kya butonde 100 ku 100. Woomerwa ekyokunywa ekirimu omubisi gw'enkooge. Hallelujah Tamarind Drink n'Hallelujah Jingated Drink bikolebwa ba Hallelujah Reflexology Healthy Solution and Nutritional Research Center Limited. Weefunira ekyokunywa kya Hallelujah leero okuva ku maduuka wonna. Bakubire ku noti 393 24 15 66.
Archbishop Janan Luwum is a modern-day martyr who was killed in February 1977 at the orders of the then president of Uganda, Idi Amin Dada. Janan Luwum showed courageous leadership in opposing tyranny, gross human rights violations, and religious persecution in Uganda during Idi Amin's time. His death triggered global mobilization against Idi Amin until his overthrow in 1979 by a combined force of Ugandan and Tanzanian defense forces. The government of Uganda in 2016 declared 16th of February a National Commemoration Day in remembrance of Archbishop Janan Luwum. This year, 2021, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the province of the Church of Uganda, together with Directorate for Ethics and Integrity, Office of the President, are organizing a scientific commemoration celebration at State House in Entebbe. The general public is therefore invited to follow the live broadcast on UBC TV and other media platforms. This message is brought to you by Directorate for Ethics and Integrity, Office of the President.
Welcome to English in a Minute. It's no surprise that cats like to sleep. A nap is a short period of sleep.
There you are. The movie is about to start.
I'm sorry. I got up at 5 this morning to go swimming, and then I helped a friend move some furniture.
Are you sure you aren't too tired for this movie?
No. I took a cat nap. As long as this movie isn't boring, I'll be fine. What are we seeing anyway?
The Long Dark Winter. It's a 3-hour foreign movie. I hope you like subtitles.
A cat nap is just a short amount of light sleep during the day. This expression became popular in the 1820s. The person who first used it probably lived with a lot of cats and noticed just how much they sleep. And that's English in a Minute.
Pick of the day on UBC, brought to you by
Wake up to Good Morning Uganda, weekdays on UBC.
Live from Now Avenue in UBC Studios, this is Good Morning Uganda.
Was brought to you by Thank you for choosing MTN. Use MTN mobile money, bundles or other services to get Thank You points. The more you use, the more Thank You points you get. We look forward to many more years together. Thank you.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Thank you for choosing Good Morning Uganda as the start to your Monday morning. We definitely wish you a very, very wonderful week ahead. And speaking of ahead, we get to look at the traffic updates and what the routes look like around the major routes of CBD, if we can call it that. That is the business area. We get to look at the business area around Bloom Street this morning from Cham Towers getting all the way to Kampala Road past Uganda Post Office. This morning it does have some jam build-ups, especially from the square and also Shimoni Road intersecting with main Kampala Ginger Road. And that does give you a picture that if you are supposed to be using this as a route, because of time, you must get to office in time. You might want to look for alternative routes away from that main road. But looking at the lower part of Kampala, which many refer to as downtown Kampala, you get to look at the Kampala Old Taxi Park this morning, which is temporarily under closure. It's under construction, but the areas that most affected around it are Market Street and Loom Street on a whole. And this morning, Market Street is having a real standstill jam because it's an alternative routes for people that are accessing this business area. That's for personal vehicles and also for taxis. They are using it as an alternative route to be able to join through Mega Standard and be able to connect to ShopRite Clock Tower and then possibly be able to connect to the rest of Natural War Road and the likes to be able to get into the other parking spaces for taxis downtown. But away from that, I'd like to look at an area that is mostly being affected by traffic this morning because construction has now taken effect. road to get into the heart of the city. And of course, what does that mean? There is a lot of traffic lights. Now, there is construction that is happening around this particular roundabout, and that is going to cause a lot of standstill in terms of jam. Also, the diversion that has been created on this route is also going to be causing a lot of jam. But thankfully, we now have full-time traffic officers from the beginning of the day till the break of the day to be able to manage that traffic jam. Another area that is facing heavy construction this moment currently is the area in Zambia. When you get into Zambia around the Arena Mall, there's also some heavy construction that has started to take shape in this particular area, and so because of that construction, you're going to be experiencing a lot of jam on any given time of the day, be it morning, mid-morning, afternoon into evening. You're going to be experiencing that because of the construction that is going on around this route. So be aware of that, and you might want to find yourself alternative routes in the meantime as that construction also does take shape, because they are working on the Kampala flyover. And so the moment it continues to take shape and form, you're going to be having these areas of Katwe, areas of Shibuya, and areas of downtown. You have areas of Zambia being affected as far as traffic is concerned. Now is a good time for you to learn those shortcuts from, if you're coming from these parts of Kampala. But around Zambia sharing, of course, you definitely also have some jam that is building up. There's a lot of jam on the road that is from St. Francis Hospital in Zambia. It's actually not moving jam. Possibly maybe there's a traffic officer that is managing the traffic jam at the intersection into Zambia Road. You get to look at away from that junction, the rest of Zambia, getting past the US Embassy, you get past Lashatu, you get past KFC, Kawalagala, you get into Kawalagala. That is where you're experiencing some bit of jam, but it's actually moving jam. By that I mean there's lots of green lines, which means that cars are easily moving. Of course, the orange lines only come at the intersection because of the interconnection at the roads. These vehicles are trying to connect to Muyenga and the likes, and that is why you do have some little bit of jam. And the fact that they are also having taxis on either side of the road, that is the only reason why you're having some little bit of jam. Again, the construction that we talked about is taking place behind the Zambia Estate Road, all the way back to where you have in Zambia Hospital. So if you are in this area, you come from the estate area of Zambia, you definitely are affected by the construction, and does explain the jam that we are seeing this morning from Zambia's hospital all the way entering into MUKONO Road. So those are some of the considerations to give yourself as you are looking for alternative routes away from that. And then you get to look at the rest of Kawalagala. You get to see that does not have so much jam building up this morning. It does have just a little bit of a few areas that have a bit of jam build up, and that's simply because these have maybe kiosks or supermarkets, or people trying to get themselves eateries this morning. But the rest of the route does not look so bad. It looks clear when you check into Soya Trading Center. It also does not look any bad. It's a very clear route. Gaba Road is clear getting to the areas of Bunga. It's clear all the way. So if you're coming from this area, you're coming from Munyoni, you're coming from Bunga, you're coming from Lukuli, and you're intersecting with Kawalagala and the likes, the rest of it into Salama is actually a very clear road. So for those of you that are coming from this area, the traffic update is you can't stick to the main road. You don't have to use the shortcuts. They will get you into Kawalagala, which is also not so bad or heavily infested with jam this morning, and you can easily make your way into town. However, you might want to avoid Queensway and possibly use MUKONO route to be able to get into the heart of the city much faster. So with those considerations, we trust and wish you a safe day on the road this Monday morning. We do have Good Morning Uganda agenda coming up, where we discuss things that are affecting us as a nation.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Yellow, how do you do? We're here to show some appreciation for the things you do.
Sent you for today, and they sent you for tomorrow. Sent you for every time and everywhere you go. We love you so, and we enjoy life with you. We are happy, happy, happy to know that we will go with you. That's why we say thank you, thank you, thank you, yeah. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you for choosing MTN. Use MTN mobile money, bundles or other services to get Thank You points. The more you use, the more Thank You points you get. We look forward to many more years together. Thank you.
It's no secret that ICT makes learning easy.
The strides made in our field could not be possible without it.
And now we can watch our favorite show.
My radio is my best friend.
UCC provides an enabling regulatory environment and policy guidance for healthy competition. We also facilitate ease of doing business in the communications sector through licensing, standardization, spectrum management, tariff regulation, rural communication development, and consumer empowerment. An informed consumer is an empowered consumer. UCC supports local content and innovations. Driving the development of a robust communication sector in Uganda is Uganda Communications Commission.
Welcome to English in a Minute. A toss is when something is thrown lightly in the air, like this. Like this. All right.
So, Jonathan, who do you think's going to win the big football game tomorrow?
Oh, I don't know. It's a toss-up, really. Orlando has a great offense, but Baltimore has a great defense. Either team could win.
Wow. You seem to actually know something about these teams.
Well, who do you think will win?
I'm just going to cheer for whoever's wearing the best colors. So, Orlando.
We use the expression toss-up to describe a situation where the result is unclear and could go either way. It refers to the actual tossing of a coin and making a decision based on that. And that's English in a Minute.
Archbishop Janan Luwum is a modern-day martyr who was killed in February 1977 at the orders of the then president of Uganda, Idi Amin Dada. Janan Luwum showed courageous leadership in opposing tyranny, gross human rights violations, and religious persecution in Uganda during Idi Amin's time. His death triggered global mobilization against Idi Amin until his overthrow in 1979 by a combined force of Ugandan and Tanzanian defense forces. The government of Uganda in 2016 declared 16th of February a National Commemoration Day in remembrance of Archbishop Janan Luwum. This year, 2021, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the province of the Church of Uganda, together with Directorate for Ethics and Integrity, Office of the President, are organizing a scientific commemoration celebration at State House Entebbe. The general public is therefore invited to follow the live broadcast on UBC TV and other media platforms. This message is brought to you by Directorate for Ethics and Integrity, Office of the President.
A good school doesn't tolerate violence against children.
Because a good school equals a better life.
Raising voices.
Dear children, this is Auntie Jovita, your friend, your mentor, and your mother. During this lockdown, many people have come up with different projects that have kept them busy, and this could be one of the projects you do for yourselves. You can have rabbits, rare chicken, and by the end of the lockdown, you have a project of your own under your name. You could ask for sponsorship or for help from mommy, from daddy, from your guardian, or even your savings, because you don't need a lot to start such a project. And you start small. You don't have to have so many things. You start with a cock and a hen. They were just 2, now they have 10 chicks. There were 2 rabbits, now there are 6 rabbits. And they are beautiful things to own. You need to enjoy your lockdown so that you have a story to tell at the end of the day. Stay safe, stay home, and be good children.
Live from Now Avenue in UBC Studios, this is Good Morning Uganda.
It is exactly a minute to the top of hour, that is 8 a.m. Hope you've already woken up, ready to go to work or to start your business, because not everybody moves from their destination to go to work. Some work at home. For the farmers, hope you've already started your daily routine to ensure that there is something at the end of the day that has really been able for you to earn your daily bread. Once again, I'm Robert Chirabo Nyonyintono with my colleague Felix Nkunda, with whom we are going to be discussing, after the reopening of schools, the fate of some students, but also more bringing in the aspect of parents. We must recall that now we fully know when all classes are going to be reporting back to school, except for nursery, where the ministry said they'll let's observe the situation because of reasons they gave. Felix, very interesting times now. At first, people never knew when they are going. Yes, because at first people never knew when schools are going to resume. You get it? So people are in suspension. Then, after some time, candidates and finalists had to go back to school. That was on the 15th of October. Then now, semi-candidates, people knew that at least come at the end of this month, the beginning of March, they'll be able to report to school. But now every class, we know when they'll be going back to school. Maybe briefly, before we go any further, to go through this timetable. Very simple. That is P6, Senior 3, Senior 5s will resume school on 1st of March, and then the term will end on 7th of June, that is 2021. P4, P5 on the 12th of April, and come 18th June, the term will close. Senior 1, that is on the 19th of April, and they'll have their exams, or term will end on the 22nd of July. Senior 2, that will be on the 18th of June till the 13th of August. Then P1, P2, P3, that is on the 21st of June, and the term will close on the 13th of August. For nursery, pre-primary, till further notice. That is for those. So now parents are aware when my child will be reporting back, how I have to organize myself to ensure that I have what it takes to get the child back to school. But the times also are not that very friendly. At the time of COVID-19, some are out of jobs, some are finding it very hard to make ends meet. But remember, school fees is a must that they should have, or other requirements as well to get in school.
Robert, probably you should also take back our viewers to appreciate when this started and why we're having this conversation. We cannot have this discussion in absence of the reminder of COVID-19 as one of the biggest causes, if not the only one, as to why our children went out of school. Around the 18th of March, if I'm not mistaken, is it when the president announced 2020 that at least 15 school-going citizens would not go back to school until a tentative, formidable and safe measure was realized for them to go back to school.
Announced on the 18th of March, then 20th was to take effect of that, the 15 million.
It's more or less the same thing. And the big question today is, have our fears been dealt with? And that's the start. For you to get a vivid shape of our discourse, you must also cause reapprehension of the fact that the stretch from March 2020 up till February this year has been marred with activities that include a lockdown, which is still actually not yet eased in some sectors of practice. Again, it has also been marred with an election, but nevertheless, the presence of the pandemic and its effect. When you're talking about education and reopening academic institutions, it would only be courteous to have the same discussion in realization of all factors that affect or that contribute to this. Among them is the naughty aspect of finances or economics, for that matter. Today, and as you read the program, government came out to announce or to give directive and guidance on how our children will be enrolling back into schools. And that was given. If you were to take a dissect into education, you may get a pie and you'll have probably four. One, you have the education sector that comprises of teachers and the institutions themselves. On the other side, you have the students. On the other side of the third part of the pie, you have the parents. But then on the other side, you have the government. Four quadro players. You have the institutions, academic institutions, you have the students themselves, you have the parents, but also government. Now, these are major stakeholders if you want to discuss education, and all of them must be dealt with. My worry is that in the announcement of government, I do not know how these were dealt with wholesomely.
The whole four or
four of them. I don't know how they have, because we must have a point where they meet. Again, the reason why I use the pie, or let me use an angle of that 360, that there's a point in the middle where they must meet. And that's the beginning. Even when you want to dissect, you start there. So we must have some bit of consensus. One, children are going back to school, the program is out. At times any different from when we pulled them from school? Let's start there, because it's not just a matter of saying they have been home. At times different. Have we dealt with the fears then? Are the fears that we had around 20th of March 2020, have they dealt with up till today? That's something we must ask ourselves.
On that, Felix, the ministry, if you remember when they're opening school for the candidates and finalists, said this is going to act as a project, as a pilot project. The outcomes will either determine if we open more schools or we do not open more schools. And I was speaking to the district education officer, Wachiso, that is Chinove Frederick Chiyinji, and he said, for example, Wachiso district, they have come to learn that in school, actually, SOPs can be more enforced than in any other community. And looking at the candidates, they have not registered any single case of COVID-19 in schools in Wachiso.
Ask your source, how many has he tested? Did you ask him?
Definitely, I didn't ask that.
That's the thing.
But he says,
so where does he get the authority to say that none of them has COVID? Does he test with eyes?
Maybe they
or
could
by
be
sight?
asymptomatic.
That's the thing. So that for me is not passable. I deal with the idea. I will deal with that as hearsay or an opinion.
Because we would believe maybe we would have sick children, and then after testing, discover they have.
When we're talking about
COVID,
if someone is asymptomatic, they actually carry a higher viral load to transfer this to any other people. And you go and try to get these stories of some of the communities where some of the kids went back for holiday. I can tell you, you see, if you didn't test, you can't say that
if you didn't test,
you can't know. We are just glad that probably the virus is not so lethal to a particular age of people. But we cannot also be comfortable with that.
After some time they ill.
So that's the question, that have situations gotten better since then? How have we closed the gap as we send back students? Have we tried to mitigate the exposure rates for our children? Let me tell you, some parents, some of us parents, and very many out there, have rather children who have asthma, who have pre-existing conditions. Some kids have all these diseases. So we don't have to have a blanket discussion. Kids don't do this. No, we must also be sure. Again, coming back to the 4 players, Robert, everyone has a role to play. However, when you're talking about roles, in some aspects, some players have major roles, others have minor, or what you call primary or secondary roles, if I may call them that way. Let's talk about the custodian of education in a country.
That is the ministry.
The government. Because education is a constitutional
right.
Now, that places
but
custody.
Also that is a
just a moment.
Just
a moment.
Right?
What do you mean? Ask your question.
Practically. Because a right is something that everyone, by virtue of being human, should access. Isn't this more theoretical and assumptional? Coming back to ground, in Uganda, is education all right?
Yes, it is, because it is constitutional. And that's the end of the discussion.
Okay.
You get it? Because if it's not in implementation, it doesn't remove the right. You get the point? Someone, the qualifier of someone being called a mother is giving
birth.
Not whether they will take care. The word mother comes from giving birth. Not whether you bought a good dress or a good shoe. Someone can't say, oh, she's not even a mother because she doesn't take care. No, take caring is being responsible. But the word mother, as long as you give birth, you are a mother. So in our constitution, the right to health to education
yes.
is there. Whether the government will uphold it, abuse it, and whatever, but the right is there. Now, because education is a right, that makes the government the main custodian of enforcing all avenues to have this right appreciated. What I'm saying is that education is bestowed in the hands of government. That's why when the government came out with the wisdom and appearance of the president to say that all schools closed, no school refused, Chikulaga, that what you're saying, that is it really right? Yes, because if it wasn't a right under the custody of the government, private schools would have said what?
Let's continue.
No, you close your but because it is the government is the major or the primary custodian of education. When the president came out to say close all schools, even a corridor school had to
close.
That shows you that, again, because you have the power to stop, you must also use this power to promote. That's what I'm saying. As we open up, I want us to discuss the roles of all the players. Government, you have opened up schools, thank you very much. In a situation, you know, what are the aiding aspects to education as you open up?
Aiding aspects?
Yes. How do you make education something that can still be appreciated amidst a pandemic as the major custodian? You get the point. Why I'm putting emphasis on government? Government is the alpha
and omega.
I don't know about the omega, but
in this, because alpha, the beginning and the end. Felix, you said
it's the beginning and the end in terms of enforcing this right. Now I'm talking about education as a right. So, what has it done as we open?
Apart from
just coming out to say that is as good, anyone can do that. Even you, Chirabu, you can come tomorrow. They tell you what dates can we open. This, what's technical. But let's talk about the things that will make education meaningful in times of a pandemic.
And what are some of these things, Felix, that you want to us to look at? Yes.
Because education is a right, it must be able to be accessed. And not by choice. The primary is not by choice. That there must be a starting point. You've seen the president struggle with PLE, USE. He's trying to implement the right, to make the right accessible and available. But remember that now we are dealing with very abnormal times. How do we make education available and accessible amidst a pandemic as the main custodian of the right to health, that is government? How? Not by simply announcing dates. Let's even take a case study of Kampala. Look at how many school-going kids are in this city. It's a beautiful city. How many of them, on a spectrum of 100, will be able to go back to school after a year?
You might find that 20% may not be able to go back.
And 20 is a big number. If you have 100 and you remove 20, you have only 80.
Felix.
Now, Robert, that means that the right to education is no longer available and accessible.
Let's look at the fact that institutions, yes, COVID-19 has brought a health threat, but looking at factors, some factors that are remaining constant. The schools, the premises are available. The challenges of teaching may be. Now you have government and private schools, but government are the custodians of education. What incentives are we looking at? How better more can we see government aid education in such a time, apart from actually setting dates and now schools being prepared? Because for the government-aided schools, yes, we know their grants can be given to purchase some of the requirements in this time. Remember, our viewer, now certain things are not going to remain the same. For example, water bills will have to go high because regular wash of hands. There has to be sanitizers, there has to be soap, there has to be some risk allowances maybe, there has to be clinics at school, at these education institutions. So COVID, there are additionals that were not in school in the previous way of running schools. So how can government chip in, Felix?
Everything rotates around the accessibility and availability of education. When you have schools, what forms schools? Schools are centers of learning. They're places where people go to learn, to acquire knowledge, to acquire skills, to acquire information, just to mention but a few. And that is the environment. But however, the environment is now depleted in terms of COVID. It means that the distortion has come with disabilities. It means that a class or a school that used to be able to have at least 1,000 students can only probably have about 500 at a go. That's why that explains the breakdown of the dates. But then, how many, you look at the comparison between government schools and private institutions.
Actually, the truth is private institutions outnumber government education institutions by far. Yes.
It means private institutions are profit-oriented institutions. It also means that even if you wanted to put all students of Uganda into government institutions, you don't have the space, you don't have the capacity. The capacity. Now, where is the parent in all this discussion? We know that the child needs to go and learn, that one is there. Government has opened up, that is there. The parent, the roles of the parent are simply to facilitate.
And they'll tell you if you can't facilitate this.
And this is something that I would have loved to hear Parliament discuss. We saw people bail out of who, bail out of who, bail out of. And it's funny and quite hilarious that Parliament is not even probably interested or doesn't know or doesn't see, I don't know. But
maybe they view it as an impossibility. Because how many parents are you going to bail out? Maybe they look at this.
Right.
Yes, but you look at this.
Once you start looking at it, Robert, as helping parents, that's where you miss the whole thing.
Let me just change the vocabulary. Where is the capacity for government, say, to help, say, to facilitate learning, Robert, even in private institutions? Then that's what they are looking at. That is why one would tell you that as a government, we have public and private schools. To some extent, not all parents in private schools may fail to meet their dues, but those that may not be able, may be there are public schools. I've spoken to some officials and they told me, Chirabo, your argument, government, 15 million Ugandans attending school. If you're to come up with that, maybe it would be times 3 the national budget.
However, I don't know who you're talking to, Robert, lately. But I'll say this, that if government is not able to enforce a constitutional right, it should close.
Realistically,
it either has to choose. I'm telling you.
Okay, what kind of
just a
help
moment.
to parents?
It either chooses.
If it's possible or
it
impossible.
Just has to either choose to remove the right of education out of Chapter 4, or it is just between the two. If it cannot aid this, then it's Jemu.
Let me look at your proposals. How it can aid learning.
You're talking about you see, where we lose the point is when you start seeing it as helping parents. That's where you start losing the whole argument. Let's look at it as enabling a constitutional mandate of government.
Oh, okay.
That will help you prioritize the word education. If you see, and I use the word priority technically for you to understand that, make it something of purpose for national growth.
That sounds very good.
Now, once you start looking at it, when we start looking at it as we are helping those who can't go here, I think that
so Felix,
governments under Parliament, Robert, has the capacity to come up with a scheme. There are parents who are able. Out of the 10 million, you don't. Not all of them need, and you will not have every one of them line up for. But there are those that need. But if there is a possibility, Robert, between March and today, more than 5 million Ugandans have lost earnings. And that's a matter of fact. More.
No doubt about that.
Now, that means their ability to facilitate their normal life processes is definitely disabled. And that's not taken for granted. Because of the disability or the failure of these households, it means many people cannot go to school. Now that will trickle down to dropouts, later on people, youth, thugs and all this kind of pregnancies and all these kind of things. Because of the fear a country will have for a generation, because if you do a projection that the COVID effects are going to start to be seen in the next 5 years, because of the fear of such effects, you make an investment. Robert, if Parliament, you're talking about this country, it will cause a total budget what? If this country can allocate 300 million to over 500 people, Robert, for what?
To purchase vehicles.
Do you know how much 300 million can pay for in this country? Students. No, let's be honest. Now let's talk. You want to talk facts. How many people we could slice 300 million. How many students do you think can cover? Isn't it over 100? Don't you think it can be over 100? So, now, 100 times 500. Yes, we can start there. I talk about education with sensitivity of the word priority. It's just about where we place our priorities. Which rights we seek to acknowledge as being part of the contribution of the socio-economic growth of a country like Uganda. That's where the thing all... You see, once you look at it as we cannot be that, it's still... I think we are taking a wrong angle of how we view education.
Well, my proposal to that, Felix, would be, yes, a scheme being set up that could work in one way, but also to be a bit more practical. You know, for me, contrary to my colleague, for me, I look at situations that have happened, how we've been able to handle them. Recently, His Excellency came out with a scheme to help owners, people that own private schools. That has not seen the light of day due to complications involved there. His Excellency also came up with a fund to help teachers in private schools. As we speak, no teacher in a private school has gotten even 100 shillings of that money. So a scheme for parents would be also a bit complicated. I'm a practical person. But what I would believe and what I would push for as to enforce a constitutional right would be looking at some of the necessities in schools, how best government can aid tax holidays as that, for example, water, which is going to be very important. Why should schools at such a time, government should come and either reduce tax or say fine education institutions in this time who are no taxing, no paying water bills, are some of the scholastic materials that are being used. Let's exempt them from tax. Look at how much schools are paying in terms of taxation. How do we exempt schools from taxation at such a point so that this can trickle down, if well monitored, maybe to the dues that parents have to pay? Let's look at maybe chalk, some of these requirements. What can government have? Okay, for the masks, can government, that would be my approach. Reducing tax, exempting tax, that I believe would trickle down to the final figure of school fees or tuition, that the burden that has to be looked in. That would be my opinion.
If you travel vastly in the world, and if you have people who have actually, you will notice that in most of countries, education is confined to government. And at least that is the starting point, that every child can be taken to a government institution unless the alternative is cast in their own choice. What you're talking about, Robert, is very good, and it's something we have discussed, we have advised, we have begged that, come on, let's look at the most essential aspects of SOPs, let's look at the prices, let's look at all what, yes. But you see, all these may not be directly affecting a parent. So a parent, schools, private schools may, because after you've reduced these costs, how do you tell them now, make sure you reduce?
Effective monitoring and supervision,
which you don't have as a country. So we have a situation where parents are left.
You don't have effective monitoring and supervision, and you have a scheme that you believe can be monitored.
Well, I'll tell you.
Supervised.
You see, Robert, it's about curing a problem. A challenge is before us, and you see, we talk about these things casually, but you're going to see the effect. You wait.
We're already seeing the effect.
Wait. I can tell you.
I know candidates
and I can predict.
P7, March just 30th and 31st. I know of candidates that are not going to sit. Just even outside my gate, that a young boy tells you, Senator Ziriwo. And you're like, what? Yes, they're not going to sit.
Today you drive on the streets of Kampala and you see these young lads, these young presidents, these young ministers, these young mothers, these young bishops, these young priests, these young pastors.
Pilots.
You know, pilots, engineers, running around cars, selling biangwe, selling bananas, just etc. masks. And you look at them with so much pain. And I don't know if this doesn't worry some of our officials, that what's the future for a country like this? These kids who should be in schools. And some of them tell you openly, and they're in government schools. You're talking about government schools. People in Uganda pay for education in government schools.
Yeah, I remember the president during his, where he was saying, should we have a referendum and understand? I brought universal education, but parents are conniving and you're charging.
Well, how are parents conniving?
Parents, you go to a school and they'll tell you, for us, we passed this in a PTA, Parents Teachers Association. We said, okay, we shall be paying some costs, some 60, okay. It was agreed, it was agreed.
It's painful, and when talking about education, people just don't realize the measure. But anyway, Robert, for me, let me just make these comments lastly. As our students go back to school, there is so much for us to think about together as a country that is recovering from so many things away even just from COVID. We must cause true focus, Robert, on to hold together some of the most important institutions. We must hold together. For example, in Uganda, you have schools that pay as much as 10 million. You have schools that pay as much as 6,000 in those localities. But how do we bridge this gap? That's why I'm putting much emphasis on government. Government must stand in between these two lifestyles. Not that there's anything wrong for those who can be able. So the people who can do whatever they have to do on the extreme, which is good, and for those who can't do. So I think, and what I'm suggesting, that we must strike a balance, and this stands in the confine of Parliament to confront this with a bitter truth. Supplementary budgets are being passed. We had what for COVID? What No one is talking about education institutions. Some schools have closed, now they are hotels, others are restaurants, teachers are bricklaying, others are in border. You must consolidate and have a formidable education system if you're going to save this country.
I want to thank you, Felix. My humble request, my humble appeal is education is a constitutional right. Let's do whatever it takes to ensure we enforce this, where education is a right and just not an opportunity as it is. We'll just thank you so much for having been part of this discussion, and we hope that stakeholders have heard and they will implement this. Have a lovely day.
Live from Now Avenue in UBC Studios, this is Good Morning Uganda.